Well, Josh, we're at episode 3 of the Forster Products Straight Shooters podcast. What have you been into these last little bit since our last recording?
Yeah, I mean, just this last week, getting a couple rifles ready for the next 2 weekends. We got Wisconsin coming up this weekend, regional match, and then K&M next weekend down in Tennessee. So that's always a favorite match of ours for the year. So just making sure the guns are tuned in and ready to go.
Yeah, and I know my kids have watched the last few episodes, or a couple episodes we've done, and they said I should wear a hat like you because that would make me look way cooler than I am. I've tried to explain to them that it's a little more than a hat that makes that happen. So I tried the shirt to try to do that.
Well, it looks like your daughter picked out both our shirts today because sure enough, you showed up with the same one on.
Right.
So you're halfway there.
Yeah, I'm getting. Well, I don't know if even halfway.
Oh, come on.
But some of that your PRS shooting's been going quite well here recently.
Yep. Yeah, the last couple of regional matches, I've had pretty good luck and a couple of first place finishes. And the first Wisconsin match this year was a third place as well, and a couple of top tens in national matches. So we're on a pretty good roll right now. So.
Well, if I would have gotten that would have been luck. But I think you're maybe giving too much credit to the nature on that one.
Yeah.
So I mean, with some of that success, I kind of thought maybe it'd be good. You know, we've talked about seating bullets, we've talked about sizing cases. So that's kind of two parts of the process. And I was thinking if it's me new, it might be nice to hear just kind of verbatim from a pro shooter that's doing well. What is your process? You know, give us the ingredients and steps that it takes to make the ammo that you're doing well with now.
Yeah. Depending on if the match or range was muddy or dirty that day, as soon as I get home, I'll put them in a dry tumbler if they need it to get some of that mud off. If they're pretty clean or I was just out on the garage floor shooting off the cement, they didn't get dirty, straight into the annealer. So whether I tumble first or not, dry tumble, just to get them clean, then it's annealing is first step. And then I do size and chamfer, debur, and
now
trim.
When you size, how are you sizing your cases?
So right now I'm actually, for my 25 by 47, I'm using a bushing die to size that neck down from 6.5 to 25. That's kind of some wildcatting stuff we'll get into in the future. But yeah, using a bushing die with our expander ball in there, so it's just a one-step process. Previously, I have experimented with just using just the sizing die, take the expander ball out, use a separate expander mandrel, and I have shot some like that. When I was playing with that and I tuned the load in, doing it that way, I continued to do it that way. But now, as much as I'm shooting, if I can get the result I'm looking for with one stroke of the press, eliminate handling that brass so much as I'm loading, that's what I'm trying to do. So now just the way our die comes, the bushing die, and then that expander ball is doing the work for me to set my neck tension.
And your goal with that process of either using the mandrel or the expander is just a way to size the whole case and then be sure the inside of your neck is consistent tension.
Yep. Yeah. So that's a full length sizing die.
Yep.
So full length sizing, hitting the entire body, and then that bushing is just set up to size it enough that expander ball is still going to do some work from the inside out then, and that's setting my final neck tension. So
now your cases they've been cleaned up, annealed. What are you using for an annealer?
Amp annealer.
Yeah.
Yep.
That, back in the day, when people would call and say they're annealing, and they're like, maybe they're having an issue bumping a shoulder or something like that, and they say, well, I anneal every time. It was always kind of a question of well, what, are you holding it with your grill tongs and running a propane torch against it?
Right.
Where now with things like that amp, I mean, I think we just have they sure added a lot more consistency to an annealing process.
Consistency, convenience. I mean, you're certainly going to pay for it, but man, once you got it, it's almost, you can't beat it. You know, say you're not annealing, you could potentially double the life of your brass, and you buy 1,000 pieces at a time. Well, it might be, you know, that's the price difference right there. If you would have just bought the annealer from the get-go.
Is that the main reason you anneal, is just for life of the brass?
No, more for me, it's consistency of the brass.
You get consistent spring backs, consistent neck tensions, things like that.
Yep. So that way I'm coming back to the same. The goal is to come back to the same softness or hardness, however you want to put it, every time I go to size that brass, and then that keeps the neck tension consistent from firing to firing, and just the loads in general, you know. So that's the main reason for me.
Okay. So now brass has been tumbled. We've got it sized, deprimed, got the right tension. It's been through the annealer. I kind of interrupted you, so getting you back on.
Yep. So we'll just start over. We anneal first. I size. I guess I should mention case lube. I actually do use Hornady One Shot case lube. I got a couple of plastic cheaper trays, reloading blocks that I stack them all up on, and you know, just hold it like you're spray painting them. At certainly 45-degree angle, and
fast way to do it. I know when we look at our like tech calls and things with that, it seems like the majority of the stuck cases we get are with people using Hornady One Shot lube, and I don't think it's because it's a bad lube. I think it's just that it's a little more finicky on the timings and the amounts that are applied.
Yeah.
So it's like everything else in your process. Get one, you know, lubing cases is no different. Be consistent with it and watch what you're doing. Don't spray your cases down with that and then go make your kids chicken nuggets and let that dry and stuff where it's not gonna work well. So.
Yep. I've heard nightmare stories with it, and I've personally never stuck a case, and my shoulder bump's usually really consistent. So I don't know if it, like you said, if it's just the way I apply it or how I've been doing it, it works for me. So one, it's fast and it's effective. So that's kind of just how I've done it, and I really like it. So
now do you worry about that when so you said you put them in your loading blocks and you spray them down? Do you worry about that gumming up, getting in those blocks? Blocks.
That's kind of why I dedicate a couple of cheap plastic ones just for that process. Because then when I go to throw powder, I have a different block all together, so that those aren't really mixing with each other. Okay.
Yep.
So spray them with One Shot. Do my sizing process. We're gonna trim, chamfer, and debur all at the same time. We have a 3-in-1 cutter, and then immediately after that, they're going back in the dry tumbler to get that lube off. And I'll run them for a couple hours. I think that the dry media, that dust from it, kind of acts as a natural lubricant, and that's something we've seen in our amp testing. The dry tumbling versus wet tumbling. We'll probably get back to that here in a moment. But
when you talk, and I keep dragging you back, but when you talk about like trim, chamfer, debur, are you doing that in one operation, or are you doing that in a couple operations?
Yeah, that 3-in-1 cutter.
Okay, yeah.
So it's it's set up to trim to my length I need, and it's also gonna chamfer and debur the inside and outside of that neck. So
yeah, and again, that's probably, I mean, one, it's consistent, but again, it's a speed thing too. I mean, you're getting all 3 operations done at one time, and that's where and not every reload do they need to be trimmed. Sure.
But it at least hits those edges and gets me that chamfer and debur still part of the process. So they all get that no matter what.
Yeah. So
whether they need trimmed or not.
If I'm just starting out and I didn't, buy those expensive cutters or anything, you really might be able to get away with not trimming each time and just hand chamfering and deburring, just thinking of.
And I did that forever.
Yeah.
The old arthritis getter, sit there and hit the inside, flip it, hit the outside manually, and you do, a couple thousand of those in a month, and you're ready to throw that thing in the garbage.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So yeah, so sorry to keep backing you up, but so we've trimmed, chamfer, deburred. We're getting closer here.
Yep. So now they go back in the dry tumbler to get all that lube off. I usually run them for a couple hours, and that, we kind of hit on the media dust itself acts as a dry lubricant, and we'll talk about that a little bit more because we're going to kind of close on our amp testing with cleaning processes and stuff. But after tumbling, they come out. Typically, I tumble with either corncob or walnut media, and yeah, I will get some of those. The flakes are in the primer pockets. So then I have my nicer tray that I throw powder with and stack those all up upside down so I can, look at the flash holes. And this part's kind of tedious, but go in there and take a small Allen wrench or even a decapping pin or something and just pop all those. It may be a few within a batch of 100, or it may be half of them. It's kind of random how that collects in there. But so just make sure my primer pockets are clean from any of that media.
Yep.
But then I don't clean primer pockets at all. I don't put a brush to them or cut them or do anything.
Or weigh them or
nothing like that. Yep. So then now that primer pockets are clean, I go ahead and prime. Then we're going to throw powder and seat a bullet. That's pretty much the basics of it.
Yeah. So I mean, pretty. I think different disciplines will add and ask for different steps and different calibers and things. I mean, the main reason I wanted to ask you on this process was like I feel like you've got a fairly simple process that's obviously working for you. So if you're just starting out, I mean, here's your recipe book of some steps you could use to start. And
it's really just testing. I mean, I've watched, thousands of videos and read thousands of articles on all these different practices, and it's just process of elimination. If it doesn't make it better, go test it for yourself.
Yeah.
See if this, okay, does cleaning primer pockets matter? In my test, it didn't. So
right.
I had similar SDs and similar group size. So it's like I if I can take that step out of my process and not spend so many hours in the loading room and get back out to shooting, that's kind of the goal here. Do as little as possible and get the best result possible.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so if you start out, try not outside neck turning type thing, and is that really adding value to you or not? And I mean, kind of how you went and you were sizing and then using a mandrel and then went to just sizing with the bushing, having the expander, and didn't see a negative change, but it was a positive change, and it was now one step.
Right.
Now, if you're, say, maybe really necking up that brass or doing some more crazy wildcatting, then you might have to look at adding some of those extra steps. But, I think simple is usually the right answer to the process. But so by saying this process is working really well for yourself, it's not necessarily meaning it's going to work really well for someone else in this, but it's a simple starting process. And
the biggest thing is once you find what's working for you, do it exactly the same every time. Consistency is the biggest thing, and that's one of the reasons I started annealing. The goal is to have that brass back to the same state it started in when this process all started. So it starts from the beginning, and I really do think the dry tumbling is pretty crucial. It sounds silly, but it's a pretty crucial step in the process for my luck with seating, at least, or even the tests we've seen.
Now, if you're entering that brass in a beauty pageant, the wet tumbling and stainless steel pins, that's going to win it.
Yes.
That brass is going to nationals every week.
Yeah.
But talk more, I guess, about that. What you found in that testing against that, wet tumbling versus dry tumbling.
Yeah.
If you could.
Just the brass gets so clean, it just seems like it's way stickier then. And then that interface between the bullet and the neck, it just spikes the pressure. So leaving some of that carbon in there is actually kind of a natural lubricant as well. And then you stack it with some dry tumbling, some of that dusty media. We just seem to get a lot better results. Seeding bullets,
Right.
1, lower pressure, 2, more consistent. Where that super clean is just like that new brass. And a lot of times it's new brass guys have issues with. Well, it's because it's so clean.
Right.
And then they, wet tumble. Now it's as cleaner than it was from the factory. And that's just that, it's just a stickiness thing, that metallurgy or something there. It's spiking pressures.
And now you said like it is part of why, because you're in your process, you're dry tumbling twice.
If need be. I would say more times than not, I actually do just go straight to the annealer. Unless, they fell in water, it was rainy, muddy.
You're at the Pennsylvania match and it's rained all day. And
Yep, last weekend that stuff got tumbled.
Yeah.
As brass was landing in 2-inch puddles.
Yeah.
So that's, you have to. But yeah. So.
Yeah. I guess if you ever, run into anything where you're having, let's say you start having an issue, and the issue might just be a flyer or something like that. Is there a specific part of your process you try to go back to and look at, or do you have like an example scenario you could lay out for us that you've had happen?
Yeah. Well, last year with my brass, that seemed like I was starting to get those clickers, and then it seemed like the groups were opening up some too. Come to find out, my full-length sizing die at that time was actually a bushing bump die, so it wasn't sizing the base.
Right.
It was my negligence to not measure that, but they were going back in the gun. Well, after 5 or 6 firings, now they're getting sticky and everything, and along with that, I was getting some flyers out of that brass. So I think that web had grown enough, and it just wasn't happy in there.
Your annealing isn't taking care of that.
Exactly, right, down at that 200 line down at the base. So after I'd got new brass, that problem went away. So that was one scenario where it just happened to be the brass. I've talked to some other shooters that, man, this gun, with this brass, it's got all sorts of fits, and then I bought new brass and it shoots like a house on fire.
Everything has a lifespan. There's a point when it does. I don't think it probably matters if you anneal it every time. It's gonna run its course, and I think it's interesting that you went back, and maybe you looked at 10 other things before that, but I think it's more natural people want to start looking at that loaded round. So like what's seating the bullet or what the powder is, and I think that it's important go back to the start, because looking at that when you looked at the sized case and found that it was the web not getting sized. I mean, you could have really sent yourself down a lot of different rabbit holes to investigate
I'm sure
this.
I did. That was probably the last thing I actually suspected, That brass only had 5 or 6 firings on it.
Right.
Why would that brass be suddenly bad, in my mind? So, I probably swapped scopes as, let's say we are troubleshooting this, and I actually just was recently here with one of my rifles. Take a scope. If you have a spare scope that is shooting well, or on a gun that shoots really well, swap the scopes. Just verify it's not a scope issue. That's one of the first things I'll check. Torque values. Make sure every screw on that rifle is torqued properly, and maybe even loosen them all and then retorque them. Maybe it's shifted in there or bound up some way. I've had before where the trigger, the safety, was actually rubbing on the inside of the chassis, and in PRS we'd never put the safety on, so it's always in go function.
Yeah.
So it's like, I didn't even realize it, and just that little bit of rubbing, it wasn't even bound up that much. It was just enough that there was some friction there, and sure enough, I took that safety off that trigger, and that gun came right back in. It was having some little flyers, so something just crazy stuff like that.
Maybe I'm sure a lot of people know what a flyer is, but maybe that maybe we should define what a flyer is first.
Yeah, I mean, when you got a gun that's, putting 3 in darn near the same hole, 1/4 inch group, and then you get one that's a 3/4 of an inch or an inch away, to me, that's a flyer.
Now, myself, usually that's a me problem.
Yeah.
not so
Sure.
much a load problem, but like yourself, who's been, if you're, you're set up sitting at 100 shooting, testing something out, that's not something that should happen to yourself.
Yeah, basically, if my rifles aren't shooting under, 3/8 of an inch, they're probably not going to a match. So that's kind of my expectations. If I can get them in the .2s, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
But once you get some weird flyers and something's not right with the system. You shot, and sometimes it's a condition. So sometimes it's good to just walk away too and come back the next day. Maybe it was mirage, maybe it was the wind. Maybe you ate something that wasn't sitting good with you, just neurologically, there could be something going on there too. But when it's pretty drastic and you've shot thousands of groups at 100 yards, you kind of know when you can call your shot, hey, that was me or not.
Right.
So what I was seeing as of recently, I was doing this, juggling around, well, let's try a different scope. Let's tune the load. Let's, go up half a grain, come down half a grain, move the seating depth 20 thou up or down. None of that was basically turning this barrel back into what it should have been. Scrub the crap out of the barrel, see if that, maybe I had a carbon ring. These are all things that could be going on, right? Velocities were still great. SDs were good, just had the flyer. Well, I said, maybe let's try taking the suppressor off. Been running suppressed lately. Not even actually sure how many rounds are on it since it's been cleaned, but sure enough, put a brake on that barrel, and it's back to shooting little knots. So there's something harmonically going on, or maybe the dirtiness of that suppressor that it's not happy on that rifle, and now that thing's back to shooting small. So
now what I didn't hear you say that you did in this process was take all your dies and throw them in the garbage, and take all your brass and throw it in the garbage, and get new brass and get a completely different powder and get a completely different bullet. I mean, you kind of systematically took one thing at a time, which I think, especially if I'm in the position where I'm like yourself, like it could be, honestly, you could sit here and laugh about that. That's really dumb to do. But when you're that frustrated and you've got a big match coming up, you might be just looking at offloading and starting over. And at what point are you like, I'm going to get the lathe out and just cut a whole new barrel and just get back to?
Honestly, if I didn't have a couple backups there, I probably may have started up the lathe and cut a new barrel.
Yeah.
But and that's happened before. I mean, I just can't get one figured out. Something's going on with it. Just start over or change powder completely. So.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother, podcast in itself on powders and things like that, and finding what shoots best in your gun. So I've seen where you change powders, and it makes a heck of a difference in this barrel.
Right.
A powder that's been working the last 2 barrels. Well, now we're kind of breaking this one in. It's not seeming like it's shooting as tight as it should. Grab a different powder off the shelf, and man, that thing just comes right together. And you're like, well, I guess this barrel we're going to shoot 4350 instead of Varget.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and that happens too. So kind of just got to listen to the barrel. Give it what it wants. So
well, so when you're, you've got this process now. Is that exactly the same if you're setting up to run your 6.5 by 47, your 25 by 47, or your wife Megan's, 6 GT, all process the same?
Yep.
Regardless?
Yep, pretty much. As far as the basics of the reloading process there that I have, that's what we do every time.
How many firings are you getting out of some of your brass through this process? Is that something you kind of keep track of, or
Yeah,
you've got
So in the past, I was maybe only buying 400 pieces of brass at a time. So then you shoot that brass, say 5, 6, 7 times. That's, your 1,800, 2,100 rounds on that barrel. Well, then that was before annealing too. So I'd just get new brass with the next barrel. So I'd just buy all new brass for that next barrel. So back then, 6 or 7 firings, and the brass is it's probably still great brass,
Right.
but now it's just sitting in a drawer at home in a Ziploc baggie somewhere. And
Yeah.
but now with annealing, my 6.5 47 brass, it's up to 12, 13 firings, still going good. And I actually just got some new Peterson brass for my 25. It's 6.5 47 brass, but we neck it down to 25. And with annealing, I'd expect, especially with the loads we're running, that's the other thing. How hot are you running the load? That's going to vary your brass life, how much you're bumping that shoulder back. If you're not knowingly bumping at 6, 7 thou, well, you're stretching that brass a lot. So all these things come into play, but
Yeah.
I would expect 15, 20 firings, but I guess my number is 10 firings, and I'm buying new brass.
That's
So
kind of where you've landed
that's where
at the
I'm
moment.
at. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's a great point. Like, it's not something Forster's going to sign off on and say you're going to get 10 firings on this necessarily. There's, you're doing a lot of things to be able to get yourself to that point, and you're investing in some good brass, be it the Peterson or Lapua. It's not that range pickup brass that you're trying to run and get that.
Well,
that
I mean, you've seen those videos where guys just take one piece of brass, fire it, anneal it, and they get like 86 firings out of it.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, it can probably be done.
Yeah.
This is what I do. I don't know why I do what I'm doing, but
Well, because it works.
it's working.
It's like-
Exactly. That's the main thing.
I think that's what everybody, when you're trying to build yourself a process, that's.
Well, and the other thing, that brass may go that many firings, but
Yeah.
you'll maybe start to notice, like, hey, now we're at 12 firings. Those primer pockets, when I'm seating a primer, they're feeling a little looser.
Yep.
So maybe that's your cue. Like, okay, maybe let's think about getting some new brass. Or a lot of variables there on what would make you decide to get new brass. But I guess kind of like my barrels. Yeah. I get new brass at 10 firings, let's call it. I get new barrels at 2,000 rounds. I don't care how good they're shooting at that time. I just don't want to risk driving across the country with a barrel with 1,900 on it.
In the middle of the match, it gives up.
In the middle of the match, it
Yeah.
decides to, not shoot well anymore.
Right.
So just for security and time and money, I always just swap them, my match barrels at 2,000, no matter how good they're shooting.
Yeah.
And usually I'll set them back, and Dad will take them and coyote hunt with them and kill a lot of coyotes for the next 3 years. So they still have life in them. They're still accurate, but
Yep.
yeah.
They're still minute a coyote guns, and probably better.
Probably better.
So that, talking about matches, I mean, we have a few matches coming up. I know you've been kind of getting ready for. It's kind of a new thing we started last year. Kind of in October, I think we did our first match, and it's a pretty unique what you've got set up there.
Yeah. Last year, late October, we hosted our first PRS match out there. Local family friend of Scott's, and he's got like 180 acres.
Something like that.
I think
close to 200, but I definitely feel like I picked up rocks and drove steel posts in him when I was 10 for a lot more than that.
Yeah, yeah. So beautiful property, kind of back, we got natural rolling big hills back there. He's got a pond.
Not quite what you think of in Illinois when you drive through Illinois.
Yep.
It's
you take 39 from north to south in Illinois, and it's just flat cornfields.
Yeah.
And that's what most people think of Illinois. And out here it's the northwest corner of Illinois. Gets into some of that really hilly, river breaky type stuff up there by Galena and stuff. But beautiful property. We got 5 matches this year.
5, I believe, yeah.
Yeah. Our next one's May 31st. It's a PRS qualifier. And then we have June 28th and September 27th, I'm sorry, and October 18th. Those are our 5 match dates this year. And we're actually doing something pretty awesome to get guys to kind of want to show up. We're doing if you shoot at least 3 matches, you're gonna get a ticket to go into a raffle drawing. And if you shoot more than 3 matches, every match after that, you get an additional ticket. So the last match of the year, we're gonna draw a prize, that ticket, and whoever gets it is gonna get. We got Masterpiece Arms. I talked to Phil at Masterpiece. They're donating a chassis. Jeff at Bartline Barrels is donating a barrel. And we're going to do an impact action, and we're going to build a complete rifle. And that shooter's going to take home a brand new custom rifle. So,
and that's just for showing up.
Yeah.
All you got to do is you can put a lot of, use the rifle you have now and put a lot of bullets in the dirt so that next year you've got a gun that you're gonna cut for us, and it's pretty exciting, and appreciate all those other guys, Bartline, MP, all them getting on board to help us do that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and in the way that they say the property, it's super nice. It's not that sitting in a cove and shooting into a man-made
berm.
Right.
Yep.
Pretty dynamic. Each one's going to be a little bit different. So
yeah, it's not your typical Midwest match where it's man-made range. It's just natural rolling hills, and that's kind of your backstop, and beautiful big valley you shoot over with a pond down there and everything.
So maybe we just, Josh, one more time, just give the step-by-step of what your process is in the highest 30,000-foot view. You get back from the match, you might dry tumble if it was a dirty match. Then it goes straight into the annealer. Then lube, size, dry tumble. Nope.
You're gonna
I'm gonna chamfer debur.
Yep. Trim, chamfer, debur.
Trim, chamfer debur.
Then tumble.
Get all that case lube off. Then we're ready to prime, throw some powder, seat a bullet, win K&M.
Well, let's do it.
Okay. So I think it's great. We've got kind of that a recipe for people to start with, that then they can add some more cinnamon if they want to do that, or whatever, add their chai seeds, whatever they want to do to that to make it their own. I think maybe in the future we can talk about that. You've kind of hinted at your load development. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, where to start, what to do. Maybe talk a little bit about some wildcatting and cartridge selection. I think we've got a lot of things we can jump off of from where we're at here. So
yeah, and you can take a couple of golden nuggets from everybody and apply them yourself, and just go test those things and see what works for you, see what you need to do, what you don't need to do, and come up with your own process. And if it's working for you, just stick to it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Keep it consistent. Keep it simple.
Well, and that's what makes it fun, is that you kind of have your own things that work. I mean, a lot of it is kind of honing in on that process. There's no real magic unicorn process that's going to work for everybody in every situation. But
one thing I do want to hit on that I do before every match, I'll actually, after all my brass is sized and processed, ready to take powder and seat a bullet, I like to, out of that batch that's been sized for the next go-around, I like to shoot a few of those rounds. One, I'm going to take chronograph numbers, and I'm going to look at groups and just confirm that, hey, this is what it was doing the time before. no, now I'm good to go. Now I go load that entire batch. I know a lot of guys that won't test that batch, and then they're at the range and it's velocity is different or whatever reason, you know, something changed there. But it's just one more verification, one more, you know, confidence boost before going into that match that, hey, everything's running how it should, and then go make that entire batch.
Yeah. Ties right into what we always say is just measure your stuff. Check your stuff.
You know, test, you know, verify.
Just because you pulled the handle in the same direction doesn't mean that everything ended up exactly the same as it was. And
right.
So.
Yeah, and even switching out dies, you know.
Yeah.
Every time you know you're sizing something now, make sure that shoulder bump's where it should be. And you're seating your bullet, make sure, you know, base toe jibe measurements, where it was before, where you expect it to be. And just the little things, you know, just keep track of that stuff and make sure it's doing it the same way every time. And if it's not, figure out how to make it do it the same way every time.
Right.
So,
well, appreciate you sharing that with us, Josh, and
Yep.
look forward to the next conversation.
Yep. Sounds good, Scott.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.